After 6 months of study, public meetings, and debate led by a special committee, the Jonesboro City Council passed the city's first property maintenance code in December 2015.
We've been looking at this issue for some time. Property maintenance code will take care of several things. One, I think on crime, it'll take care of that too, and also the value of your homes, keeping those homes up in the city of Jonesboro will help the value of every home around that home. And so to me, it's something that this city needs to keep the quality alive here in Jonesboro. In other words, this is a great place to raise a family, and because of people take care of their homes, keep them up. You know, we've torn down 50 homes, demolition, and we need something other than just the answer demolition. We need something that will help us keep these homes up to par, and I think that the property maintenance code is a great idea to do that.
The Jonesboro Property Maintenance Code applies to all existing residential and non-residential structures and all existing premises. Its purpose is to ensure public health, safety, and welfare. Specifically, the code applies minimum requirements for light, ventilation, space, heating, sanitation, protection from the elements, life safety, safety from fire and other hazards, and for safe and sanitary maintenance. It also spells out the responsibilities of owners, operators, and occupants.
We made a decision, and actually under the mayor's direction, that we would take complaints from the citizens, but that we wouldn't go out and actively search for violations. Because this was a groundswell of support for a property maintenance code, we initially looked at it because of complaints we'd received from citizens. We decided just to continue with that and let them dictate to us where our efforts are needed. I think we'll see complaints from neighbors who live next door to blighted or rundown properties. We'll get some from business owners in a business district where one business isn't taking care of their property. We'll get it from tenants who live in property that's not being maintained. And then again, we'll get it from the general public that call up, and as they're driving down the street and see something, people want to be proud of Jonesboro. So when they see things that look bad, they want to bring it to somebody's attention to, again, because they live here and they're proud of where they live and want to maintain that sense of pride. We're going to keep a track of every complaint that we receive. Depending on what kind of complaint it is, really dictates how we move through that process. For instance, if it's a complaint just on the exterior of a property, we can go and look at it from a public place, then we will respond to that. If the complaint is on the inside of a property, then we have to have a legitimate reason to be inside that property, which means the person that complains is going to have special knowledge of what's going on. They're going to have witnessed it in some way, shape, or form. It's going to have to be egregious enough that we believe that people's health and safety is at risk, and then we'll respond. Now, again, in that response, the occupant of the property, whether it be the owner or tenant, can tell us not to come in. They can refuse to allow us to come in. The right of entry in no way circumvents the Fourth Amendment right to not be subject to unreasonable search and seizure. But if we get a complaint on the interior and we approach somebody and request entry to look at a complaint, the occupant, again, the occupant, whether it be owner occupied or tenant occupied, they have the right to refuse entry. The only recourse we have after that would be if we still felt that the public interest dictated that we try to gain entry, is we would have to get a judge to issue a search warrant for that property. There is a permission to search form. In that, we let folks know that they don't have to let us search. They can limit the scope of the search, and they can withdraw that consent at any time. We will use that anytime that we're requesting to search someone's property, as well as anytime we're requesting to view a violation from the property of another person. If a landlord, or if a tenant rather, complains, then the first step is we're going to ask them to notify the landlord, to give the landlords the opportunity to do what they do, which is maintain their own property, free from our influence whatsoever. Again, that relationship between the landlord and tenant is a special relationship legally, and so we're going to encourage, matter of fact, we're going to require that if a tenant wants to complain to the city, that they have first notified their landlord and given them the opportunity to fix it before they ever call us. So once we've established that that's happened, and then if, again, a landlord still has not fixed it, we're going to go to that property. We will, again, request entry, but before we request entry, we're going to notify the landlord that we're going to that property. Give them the opportunity to be there present. Ultimately, most things will be the responsibility of the landlord to repair, so it just makes good sense to have them there with us from the start to view the problem. Some of them may or may not be aware of the exact nature of the problem, and there might not be a problem, and having them there with us, again, just shows the openness that in the process, as well as that good faith relationship between the city and the folks at Jonesboro.
The council took some extra steps and added some extra safeguards in this one that added the addition of having to get written consent from the property owner in an owner-occupied property. So for instance, if we came to your house and we wanted to come in and look at something inside your house or inspect your house and it's the house you live in, you would have to sign a written consent for us to come into that residence. And if you didn't, then they would not be allowed to come in. On a landlord-tenant situation, the tenant can give that written permission because they're in control of that household. So again, it would require written permission, but the tenant could give the written permission to come into the house for an inspection. So it actually has more safeguards than some of our other codes that allow a right to entry.
Once we receive a complaint, then we're going to go out and investigate that complaint. If the complaint is found to be valid, then we will issue a notice of order or order to repair. They will have the ability to appeal that through the Civilian Appeals Board, but if the Appeals Board then upholds that, then they're going to have that time frame that we give them to have the repair made. So it could be anywhere from 60 to, again, 180 days, and even that can be extended if need be. Obviously, weather, we don't control the weather, and so weather-related problems may dictate that we need to extend that time period. The hardship of the people, if they come up to us and show us that they have a hardship, that they cannot make the repairs in the amount of time that's given, then that can be extended. The appeals board is going to be made up of 3 to 5 people. They'll all have to be members of the community that have some sort of knowledge in the construction industry. They cannot be city employees and they're not paid. So their job will be when a person gets a violation notice and they appeal it, their job will be to hear that appeal on whether or not the violation does in fact fit the ordinance and whether or not the order to repair is reasonable. So the appeals board, once they hear it, they can either strike that order to repair, they can amend the order to repair, or they can uphold it. The committee that looked at this eliminated the possibility of the city actually charging fees to enforce the property maintenance code. The only way that a fine would be imposed would be from a district judge if the person is cited to court for failure to adhere to the order of repair. Once a person fails to make the repairs, then they can be cited. They don't have to be, but they can be cited to district court. And then they'll, again, once they enter the court system, they will have the process that's allowed for them there, which they can plead not guilty and have a trial. They can, regardless of what comes out of that, then they could appeal that to circuit court.
Once a person has exhausted their appeals with the city, if they still don't make the repairs to the property that have been requested, the code enforcement officer or whoever is involved in the case can cite them on a court citation to come to court. It would be just like if you got a citation now for not mowing your yard or illegal dumping or anything like that that we cite people to court on currently. Once you get the citation to court, you'd be given a court date. You come to your first appearance on the court date. You can either plead guilty or not guilty on that day. If you plead not guilty, the judge will set you for a trial. Usually that's within a week or two of the date that you plead not guilty. On your trial date, you would appear in front of the district court judge and you would present your evidence. You would present your reason why you haven't made the repair, or that you don't believe the repair is necessary, or that it's not required by the code, whatever your defense is for why you haven't done what was asked by the City of Jonesboro. The City of Jonesboro would have the burden of proof of proving why you are not in compliance with the code and why the repair should be done. And then at the end of that trial, the judge would make a determination of whether you're guilty of violating the code or not. If you're found guilty in district court, just like any other criminal citation or code violation citation, you have the opportunity to appeal that to circuit court, at which point you can go in front of a circuit court judge and again plead your case. If you're ordered to make the repair, and by ordered I mean ordered by the court to make the repair, and you don't, each day that you fail to make that repair can be considered a new and ongoing offense. What would have to happen on each of those is code enforcement would have to come back out and cite you every single day for a new violation. And then you would have to come back to court and go back through all of these processes again on each individual one.
From the fire department aspect, codes aren't anything new. The general codes that have affected the fire department of the City of Jonesboro for many, many years cover everything from the basic fire safety codes, building codes, electrical, plumbing, the very basic codes that give the minimum standards for any building that's being constructed inside the City of Jonesboro, whether residential or commercial. So we have been following basic codes for many, many decades. So this isn't really anything new to the City of Jonesboro.
There's a long-lasting connection between blight and crime in our community and the manner in which it's reported. We know that well-maintained property is less susceptible to crime. We know that property that's well-maintained will not be a haven for criminal activity. The Jonesboro Property Maintenance Code will serve as a valuable tool to the citizens of Jonesboro to help keep our neighborhoods safe and free of crime.
I voted for it because we need something that's going to help the low-income people be represented. And at this particular time, they really don't have a representation. Right now, the poor people have been taken advantage. Just like some of the lies have been told about, they can just walk into your house. That's not biblically, and that's not even lawally truthful. The law actually says there's a progression, there's a way of doing things. There has to be somebody to make contact, number one. There's going to have to be a settlement between the landlord or the tenant, that type of person, and that progression, if that's taken care of. And from the legal standpoint, dealing with the city attorney, made it totally clear that this thing would have to go before a judge and let the judge actually use his jurisdiction or his analysis on what needs to be done. But for the low-income families, these houses should be taken care of in the first place. You know, it's like anything that you do. If you do it right the first time, you don't have to worry about it. And I think right now, low-income families, particularly in the minorities, just like in this community, this is going to really affect 90% of the people that's renting. Right now, even some landlords are just taking advantage of them and actually getting rich off of the low-income establishment in this community. That's bad. I mean, you know, I don't quite understand that. My wife and I did something when we first started renting. We decided to, in our rental process in the houses that we have, to make sure that they were standard enough that if something happened to my personal house, that we could move in any one of our rent houses and live just as comfortable as we were into our regular house. So why not fix the houses up in the beginning so nobody has to tell you what to do? Once again, if you do what you're supposed to do in the first place, then what are you worried about? So that lets me know that a lot of people wants to take advantage of people from a financial standpoint, which is totally wrong. And at the same time, I got to meet my maker, okay? And if I do you wrong, then what's that gonna look like? So even not from a city council person, you know, if I look at it from a standpoint of my personal relationship with God, I'm gonna lie to you so that I can get rich, or lie to you so that I can take advantage of you, and then walk around here feeling happy about it. Something's wrong with that picture.
Sometimes it's criminal to where some of these houses land. I mean, as far as just, safety-wise. I mean, holes in roofs, and, you know, it's just really not, habitable for a dog. It's saddening. And it saddens me that people don't want to fight for the people that live in that. The thing with the code is it it works. I mean, it's worked in so many other communities. There's not any doomsday stories that have come out of it. You know, it's helped communities rebuild. And to me, if you're proud about Jonesboro and you're proud of the city you live in, proud of the city that's fed you, that's part of kind of giving back too. I think the code that they've laid out has a proven track record, not only on rebuilding communities, and also not infringing on people's rights. I mean, it really, what it does is it helps sustain a healthy community before it goes too far.
For more information or to view the property maintenance code, visit www.jonesboro.org.